now we're going to open up the floor to Q&A, and we will take 3 questions, and the speaker will get 2 minutes to ask the question, and our panelists will get 5 minutes each to respond to 1, 2, or 3. It's up to them how many questions they want to answer. Okay, so I have one online, and then I see Ans's hand, and then I'll take one more. So folks, be ready, speakers, be ready for the 3 questions. So the first question online is, if the U.S. goes even deeper into debt, will that not weaken the dollar even further, and therefore the dollar's dominance of the international monetary system? That's question number 1. I will now go to Hans.
Okay, I'm unmuted. The hand grenade that Trump threw into the context of Canada-U.S. relations was the word annexation, 51st state. In discussing the inevitable nationalist reaction among Canadians, none of those 3 speakers have really addressed this particular aspect. And it is an aspect of the Canadian class struggle. My personal contention is that we are already the 51st state, economically speaking. This is a result of the vast ownership of our resources in America. And another typical example, the desire on the part of the Canadian ruling class to integrate, no more so than in the banking sector, where the Canadian banks, the big 5, contain roughly 1/6 of the U.S. retail market, if I have to guess at it. Unlike the waffle, which described itself in the 70s, while the Soviet Union still posed the socialist alternative, in the form of a movement for an independent socialist Canada, the waffle. This was a avowedly socialist tendency in the NDP. Today, the most personified working class ex-member of parliament, Charlie Angus, is promoting a purely nationalistic pledge for Canada. Admittedly, he is on board on Gaza, on native rights, on fighting the Gulag, etc. But the S word is missing. I don't think I have more time, but I would like our 3 speakers to deal with this particularly Canadian aspect.
Okay. All right. The next question online is unions. I think Jeff mentioned in his presentation that unions have to be rebuilt from the ground up. How can we, as socialists, affect that change from within deeply ingrained systems and processes? So that's your 3 questions. I will come back after that. You have up to 5 minutes to answer 1, 2, or 3. And we will start with Jaime, then Barry, then Jeff.
Could you repeat the first question? I didn't quite grab it. I didn't quite understood it. The first.
Okay. Yes, I'm trying to find it again. Have you got it, Carrie? On it, because it's my screen is acting up here. You have the first question on your screen?
I can repeat it.
Yes, please.
If the U.S. goes even deeper into debt, will that not weaken the dollar even further, and therefore the dollar's dominance of the international monetary system?
Okay.
Okay, so there you go.
Okay, so yes, it's the problem is that getting more debt or emitting more bonds is like trying to cure your or to relieve your thirst with salt water. I mean, it's well, no, it's something probably much something toxic, and that is what is happening. They are in a very deep problem. They know it, and they don't have a particular way out. And this is remember that this rift between Trump and the richest man in the world. It started from the criticism that this guy made of Trump's a big great bill or this
Big beautiful bill.
Beautiful bill. Yeah, that's right. Because it was going to increase debt by at least 2 trillion in this decade. So yes, you're completely right. I would like to talk a little bit about the question of Canadians' reaction. You are completely right in the fact that our economies are integrating. This is an objective reality. This is not because of someone's design. This is something that is happening. Mexico's economy is being more and more integrated into the U.S. and well, as many phenomena like this is very contradictory. It has a very progressive part, just like all this globalization has been so much discussed as of lately. It has a powerful, incredibly progressive part. Like the Communist Manifesto said, you know, the Chinese walls are coming down, and this is the internationalization of the economy, and we are living a particular and very important part of it, which is the integration of North America into a single economy. This has a very positive part, but it also has a negative part. Globalization has hit very hardly and very harshly sectors of the working class because the jobs migrate to other countries. The remedy that Trump is proposing is completely ludicrous. Thinking that these tariffs are going to have as a result that factories will be moved back into the U.S. And he forgets one thing. I mean, many of these are American companies. I mean, the American companies that put these factories in Mexico. It's terribly expensive to move a factory. Probably it would be better to build it new. But there's another problem, which is the whole logistics of getting all this production in the U.S. It's going to happen only in a very limited sense. Yes, we favor internationalization of the economy, but of course, if it's done under capitalism, what the capitalists would like to do is to make the working class pay for this and create these terrible situations where whole townships or whole regions in the U.S.
10 seconds.
Okay, are converted into rust belts, and people lose even their way, not only their jobs, but a whole way of living, and that is disastrous, and only a socialist solution could remedy or could prevent this from happening, while at the same time taking care of the positive part of this globalization.
Thank you. Barry, 5 minutes.
Okay, I presume you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank everyone who contributed questions and comments. These are very pertinent issues, and it's wonderful that we can extend the discussion with the help of these questions that have been posed. Chris asked about working class independence. What is a democratic worker-controlled state? How would a socialist economy operate? Of course, we're not on the eve of a socialist revolution, so we can't prophesy too much. But there are some things that emerge from the history of the workers' movement and revolutionary struggles globally that give us some sense of direction. First of all, working class independence means no collaboration with capitalist parties in the state. So there are many ways of exemplifying this principle. In terms of collaboration or subservience to the state, remember the truckers' convoy that occupied downtown Ottawa for 3 or 4 weeks with the collaboration of the police and the right-wing truckers, I might add. Justin Trudeau introduced legislation to enhance the powers of the state to intervene and to arrest lawbreakers. We argued that such legislation was completely unnecessary and would be utilized in the future against the left and against the workers' movement. So we're opposed to that kind of collaboration with the state. We're opposed to collaboration with the capitalist parties. The solution to problems of the militant right wing or employers who are intransigent in their demands to break the back of labor is mass mobilization. The workers can more readily take direct action, which will educate them as to their potential power, as well as bring down their opponents. What would a democratic worker-controlled state look like? Well, the authors of the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels, they said, if you want to know what the worker state would look like in the future, look at the Paris Commune of 1871. France had lost a war to Prussia. It withdrew from Paris. The workers and poor people, craftspeople, women and children stepped forward into history. They formed directly elected councils. There was the right to recall officials who did not carry out the mandate of their electors. The wages of the representatives in the commune were no greater than the average of workers that they represented. So there was less scope for the emergence of privilege by a petty bourgeois layer. These were the principles of the Paris Commune, and they were revived in the Russian Revolution of 1917. And the revolution in Russia was more of a direct product, not only of a resilient revolutionary Marxist mass party, the Bolshevik Party, but it was the result of the formation of a parallel state, a dual power situation where workers, soldiers, and farmers elected their representatives to assemblies, and these councils, the Russian word is Soviet, these councils decided on issues of war and peace and economic planning and the priorities of the new society. They recognized the rights of women to abortion on the basis of choice. They recognized they struck down laws against homosexuality and other forms of national oppression. That was the way forward. A democratic worker-controlled state would be one which is not just sympathetic to the workers, but is actually run by the workers, having smashed the old state of the ruling rich. That's what we aspire to. The socialist economy, what would it look like? Well, it would look very different than our present economy, to say the least, because it would be democratically planned, and the principle would be to meet human needs. It would be planning for human use, not for private profit. So what do we mean by that in concrete terms? Well, there would be an enormous saving, billions and billions of dollars, by ending the spending on the implements of war.
1 minute left.
Wasteful goods, services, wasteful packaging, all of this would would be put in the dustbin of history. What about the decline in the rate of profit? Well, increasingly, we see machinery displaces labor. The new factories in China are almost fully automated. Even if firms came from Europe and China, modern firms, based on the latest principles of technology and production, they would be creating factories with almost no workers. There would be people who would be monitoring the machines, the robots, but this would not be the solution that Donald Trump prophesies. How to rebuild the labor movement? Socialists have to enter the unions. In our dozens and scores and hundreds and eventually thousands, we have to enter the existing unions and fight for workers' democracy, for control from the bottom up. Union officials shouldn't be paid more than the people that elected them to office, and they should work for the common good and not rely on the state, not rely on arbitration, but on mass action, calling on the support of workers across the board for their worthy struggles. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
Jeff, you're muted.
How's that?
Good.
I agree with Jaime and Barry. The problem is capitalism. The problem is the functioning of the capitalist system itself that carries within it its inherent contradictions. It is compelled to war. It is compelled to breaking unions. It is compelled to opposing every effort of working people to improve their lives at the expense of the capitalists. Capitalism and workers cannot coexist. That's our fundamental thesis. What a revolutionary party is an organization that embodies the program of the reactionary, unreformable nature of the capitalist system and seeks to organize independently the working class to overthrow it. Capitalism contradictions can only be solved by mass murder, by war, or by temporary measures like increasing debt, introducing legislation against workers, and all of the other measures that the ruling class is imposing and trying to impose today. The result of all of these measures is the immiserization of working people. And the only solution to this is the independent organization of working people through their own organizations led by a revolutionary socialist party. A revolutionary socialist party simply embodies the lessons that workers have learned. The Russian Revolution codified those lessons in its program. Equality on every front, against national oppression, against imperialist war. Independent organization of workers. That's our job. There's no quick solutions. Analysis of the technical problems associated with ever-increasing debt is excellent, but only at the intellectual level. It's the conditions that the capitalists impose that necessitate their constantly increasing the debt that brings workers into the class struggle. And only those conditions, no intellectual arguments, but only the effect that capitalist policies have on workers. Our job is to crystallize this knowledge in a party that is deeply integrated into the daily struggles of the working class. a party wedded to mass action, independent mass action. And mass action is not just a few words. Mass action aims to increase the confidence of working people in their own numbers and power. It's qualitatively different than putting out a newspaper, that propaganda, and talking to people and having forums. All of these are absolutely necessary, but without them being accompanied by mobilization of working people that demonstrates their power in the field, no change is possible. That's our job. And we will be surprised at the rate of radicalization. Radicalized workers are not a product of step-by-step patient mobilizations.
30 seconds.
They are a product of patient organizing that sometimes, when least expected, breaks into mass struggles that suddenly poses the question of power if the Revolutionary Party is there and deeply integrated into every aspect of life in capitalism, including in the army, in the unions, and everywhere else among the oppressed nationalities. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Okay, so now we're going to the next round of questions, and you have 2 minutes, Julius, and the panel will also get up to 5 minutes. We will try for 3 questions if we have them. Julius?
Thank you, and fantastic presentations from all. I'm constantly reminded at every time we have an educational why I am a member of Socialist Action, and so lucky to work with so many brilliant comrades. So thank you very much for the presentations. My question is particularly around the question of BRICS and what our orientation should be. In Canada, when news of Trump's tariffs came about, there was a lot of discussion about, well, what should Canada do? And let's assume that the Canadian ruling class was truly in favor of being open to all options on the table, which of course we know is not the case. The idea of Canada joining BRICS came up quite a bit. In fact, even in SA among some comrades, the idea came up. So my question is, what should our orientation towards the formation of BRICS be? In SA Canada, our analysis is that BRICS is essentially similar to the movement, the non-aligned movement that existed, in the 60s and 70s, maybe in the 50s. I'm not sure if it was that early. But I think the material conditions are not quite the same, specifically that, the nations that really head up BRICS, China being, the key one, are the factory of the world. And the economic power behind the member states of BRICS is significant, I think. But the question is that, these are not worker states. Okay. I don't think that they are. Is the BRICS phenomenon something that we just simply observe? Is there any value to the interpretation of anti-imperialism that some folks have interpreted with, supporting Russia or China or Iran or any of these nations? What should our orientation be? Because BRICS is something that's new. I don't know, I don't want to, rehash what I just said, but it feels like it's something quite different from the non-aligned movement. And I think I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question is, how can socialists and the working class resist the rise of AI, which steals workers' creative output? super exploits workers in the global south to mine rare earth minerals and train models, consumes excessive energy and water, and threatens to eliminate many types of work. So that's the second question. Do we have a third? Because I'm having trouble getting these questions in the chat. So I don't know what's happening, folks. But
I have a question, John Orrit.
okay, go ahead, John.
No, really? Oh, that easy. Okay. More a comment than anything else. I think Canadians may soon realize with Carney that they've bought a pig in a poke. He had a lot of harsh rhetoric on the way to the polls and before being elected, but it hasn't amounted to very much since he's formed government. They just the U.S. just raised the tariffs 25 to 50% on steel and aluminum. No response. We're going to study it and respond later. All this tough talk. Oh, really? We have elected a group of globalist enablers. Enablers to the rescue. Chrystia Freeland has supported globalization for years. She supported the sellout of our natural resource industries and other industries. No wonder we don't have much say about where jobs are going to go. Carney has held the highest posts in imperialist capitalists. He was the head of the Bank of Canada, and yes, he helped bail out the Canadian banks. And yes, Canadian banks were bailed out with the federal government, with our taxpayers' money, bought out CMHC mortgages. He was the governor of the Bank of England and helped Brexit go through, even though personally he may not have thought it so much, but he did the bidding of the Prime Minister of England. He helped implement Brexit. And we have Doug Ford. Remember Doug Ford's big talk about we're going to put an excise tax on electricity. You recall they went down to the United States, had a big conference there. They came back with their tail. They came back with their tail between their legs. We need to put the measures on that are good for us, and that would be an excise tax on electricity, and of course an excise tax on oil going down to the United States that they can't replace, even if it's small, 3 or 5%, something like that. That money would bring in a lot of revenue that would support services for workers who are going to be unemployed or are suffering. So, just an observation.
It, John. Time's up.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to move to the speakers, 5 minutes to answer any of these questions. We're going to start with Jeff, then Jaime, then Barry. Jeff?
Thanks, comrades. As far as BRICS, for those of you who don't know, it's Brazil, Russia, India, and 2 other countries.
China.
And South Africa.
South Africa.
Brazil.
Right. I don't think BRICS is worth a nickel with regard to class struggle. It's a bunch of capitalist countries that are trying, without any success so far, to form alliances to counter a bunch of other capitalist parties. Brazil was part of BRICS when its head was a neo-fascist type, Bolsonaro. India has a reactionary government and contributes nothing progressive to the world economy. And South Africa is a, quote, liberal capitalist country that imposes capitalist austerity. And Russia is a capitalist country. The idea that some combination of capitalist countries, including China, which I put in that category, some combination of capitalist countries is going to come together to fight another combination of capitalist countries is contrary to fundamental Marxist principles. Capitalism can't be reformed regardless of what form it is. When you find yourself in alliance with Modi and Bolsonaro or Lula, who heads the coalition capitalist government, you're heading down the road to defeat. The debate over BRICS has to do with the class nature of these countries. In my opinion, they're all capitalist. And even if hypothetically one was a deformed worker state, it wouldn't change the nature of the coalition. Artificial intelligence is great if it is in the context of a government that represents the working class, that will use technological advances to increase the quality of life and leisure of working people. At the hands of the ruling class, artificial intelligence means massive unemployment and layoffs. Socialists are never against the use of technology to advance the interests of all humanity. We welcome labor-saving devices that frees human beings to realize their full potential as human beings that capitalism rejects. So those are my two basic response. As far as the third question, this or that tax program or legislation may or may not at a particular time serve an opportunity to educate working people, but it is subordinate to the idea of organizing workers to defend their own interests independently. Sometimes it can be an election, sometimes it can be a working class election, sometimes it can be a referendum, like classically the referendum against war, like capitalism. Capitalism has no right, or a worker should vote on war. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jaime?
Yeah. First, I will not answer on BRICS. I think Jeff has already done that, but I will tell you our experience with one of these progressive governments in Latin America. Our current president, Claudia Sheinbaum, has a very high popularity, above 85%. But this is the product of the fact that during the last elections, that's last year's July elections, the ruling party, Morena, invested an enormous amount of money in handouts. Some of these handouts are legal, or illegal. But the problem with this is that it acts as an anesthetic to society. That is, families who are receiving let's say a significant amount of money. They are not very large in American or Canadian in the scale of earnings, but they have been very well received by the population. The problem, these handouts are not sustainable. The government, in order to cap this electoral victory, they incurred into an 8% of the national gross product, or the internal gross product, 8% deficit. It's huge. This is not sustainable, and but it was done as a political. movement. The government is running out of options. the Mexican oil company is bankrupt. It owes more money than the sum of all its assets. And that's a terrible situation to be in. It only survives because it receives large subsidies from the government. So they're into all sorts of problems. And this is inevitable for progressive government in capitalism. This is inevitable. They will not solve poverty. They're just that. They're anesthetics that will have a role for a moment. They will be important for a moment. Okay, AI. AI is not as great as it is as all this propaganda. It's very important. It's very important. It does have a very surprising. It does do very surprising things, but there is one economic law which is very important. Something that does not have human labor into it has no it adds no value. In other words, capitalism could not by any means have an economy that reach an economy where it will be completely run by machines. That's impossible. They will not. They will try to purge. I don't know if you have used some of these artificial intelligence. They do very surprising things, but they can't do everything. And they're running into all sorts of problems. Even these huge companies like Microsoft, they release their AI products. They have great embarrassments, and they haven't controlled that completely. But it will be an important economic factor. Our answer: working hours should be reduced. Right now, the 8 hours a day do not correspond to the level of productivity in the factories. And this is one of the reasons for this pernicious unemployment that is being that we are living. Working hours. This should be one of our most important demands. Workers are producing a lot more with the current technology, but they have not been compensated in the fact that they. Thank you. Please go on.
Thank you, Barry.
Okay. Thanks to John Ort for his question. Prime Minister Carney, Mark Carney, has been hailed by many business publications as a progressive conservative, not a conservative of the type represented by the leadership of the Conservative Party today, but the Conservative Party of old, when the economy was still expanding and relative prosperity reigned. Relative, because there was still a great array of poor and impoverished people. Carney is a conservative. He is for the expansion of the oil and gas industry, not just to placate the Alberta government, but to make Canada an energy powerhouse on the world scene. Along with that goes a very heavy price, and that is the further pollution of the atmosphere, causing catastrophic climate disasters, which we can see again as Western Canada is on fire, and Eastern Canada is breathing the result. Carney introduced Bill C-2, and Bill C-2 increases the powers of the RCMP and border security staff to block refugees, to subject people to previously unwarranted search, of devices and all manner of luggage. This is an attack on civil liberties. Carney abandoned the increase, canceled the increase in the tax on the rich, the super rich, at the highest levels of profit earning. So we have to recognize that there is a greater scope for the labor movement and the left to present a stark alternative. But instead, the controllers of the New Democratic Party, which is linked directly to the labor movement, resist. And they want to appear, quote, reasonable in capitalist terms. And that is a dreadful mistake, the results of which are all too evident in the federal election result on April 28th. So we need to connect our fight for the construction of a class struggle left wing in the unions and other social justice movements to a struggle for socialism in the NDP. Hans asked, the S word, socialism, is missing. How to rebuild labor? Well, the best and perhaps the only way to rebuild it is to take the principles of social reorganization of society in the interests of the vast majority into both labor and into the labor-based NDP. There is an appetite for this, but it has to be articulated proudly and clearly to the rank and file. That is the orientation of socialist action, because we have a working class orientation. We don't see any other class that can solve the problems created by capitalism. And concerning artificial intelligence, Jaime is correct to say that the answer is a shorter work week. We don't reject labor-saving technology. We embrace it, but we recognize that if it's not in the hands of the working class, it'll be used to increase exploitation and to repress those who challenge exploitation and oppression. So AI could be a boon.
1 minute left.
Or it could be a bane. It just depends on who's in control. And we have to highlight and stress ever more the need for a shorter work week without loss in pay and benefits. That comes out of Trotskyist transitional program. We have to oppose an excise tax on the U.S. That's the perfidious road to protectionism. More countervailing tariffs is not the way to go forward. We need to educate and organize the working class to fight the tariff wars through direct mass action, not rely on the mechanisms of the capitalist state. That is our ruination. The alternative is direct mass action from the bottom up, however long it takes. That's the course that we have to advocate clearly. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. That is the end of the question and answer, but I'm going to give each panelist a couple of minutes each to say some final words if they've missed out on something, up to 3 minutes. So I will start with Jaime.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We have touched. Thanks to all participants for the questions, for their comments in the chat here, and we have gotten into some very deep problems. This has been a fine. This has been a very fine panel. With points that I had not planned to speak about them, but they have come up, such as the question of artificial intelligence. So we have had a very rich discussion. I think we have some of the fundamental. We have polished or we have perfected some of our slogans, some of our ideas, and I want to thank thank Barry for having invited me here, and so I'll just leave it there and wish you a very good educational for the rest of the expositions that you are going to receive in the next hours. Thank you so very much again. And bye-bye.
Thank you, Jaime.
Jeff. Bye-bye, Jeff. It's been a pleasure seeing you again.
Thank you very much, Comrade Jaime. Okay, so I'm going to go to Jeff now for if any, up to 3 minutes, any last words that he would like to say that he didn't get to say earlier?
Did you say that I had 3 minutes or 30 minutes for the summary?
Well, of course, 30. The California wine is on the way. Okay, 3 minutes, Comrade.
Thanks to Socialist Action Canada and to Jaime for a productive discussion. To be brutally frank, in the United States, the left has never been in a weaker position. There are very, very few organizations that abide by the fundamental principles of class independence. Almost the entire left went for the Democratic Party, for Genocide Joe. That was an unprecedented and disgusting example of the state of the American left. All of the Stalinists, neo-Stalinists, Marxites, liberals ended up with lesser evil politics, which is the death of socialist politics. So I'm very proud of the small group Socialist Action. If we're counting, we probably have less than 50 people, if not fewer. But we appreciate our relations with the comrades on this call, not only in Mexico and Canada, but in Ireland and Italy and everywhere else where people fight. Our view is that we are not in a right-wing reactionary period. Workers are angry. They are disgusted at the state that capitalism has placed them and their organizations. They are looking for alternatives. But in the absence of a visible revolutionary socialist party that has some roots and leads some struggles, that is not the moment we're in today. We're obligated to continue the fight, to continue exchanges like the one we have today, and to be totally confident that workers will fight back. The history of the class struggle is only the history of workers taking their lives back into their own hands, rejecting reformist solutions, and engaging on the path of independent revolutionary political action, anchored in our historic transitional program, in our fight for democratic rights for everyone, in our opposition to racist, sexist, and homophobic prejudice, in our unqualified opposition to all imperialist wars, and most of all, to our dedication to building an independent
30
revolutionary
seconds.
party to abolish capitalism.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. So glad that you're here, comrade. Take care. Barry?
Yeah, I want to thank, first and foremost, I want to thank Jaime and Jeff for their excellent expositions on the current situation in each of their countries and globally. And you can see why we in Socialist Action in the Canadian state are so proud to work with comrades of this quality, small organizations which have a greater weight in the social movements than their numbers would suggest otherwise. So we will continue our collaboration with them, and for reasons that you can see abundantly in the discussion that we've enjoyed this afternoon. I'm just going to touch on a couple more things. The contradictions of capitalism are accumulating. There's a decline in social conditions that grows daily. The left is weak, but it offers the only answers in terms of the socialist program, the transitional demands that I tried to highlight in my presentation and in answer to some questions afterwards. The revolutionary left offers the only rational answers to a situation that is increasingly untenable. Untenable in terms of the environment, untenable in terms of the permanent wars that rage around the globe, untenable in terms of the crisis of food and housing and healthcare. It is an accumulation of contradictions that will explode. And when the explosion occurs, it's vital that revolutionary organizations exist, even if only in skeletal form, that they can and give direction to the struggles that will arise. Some individuals, profoundly disoriented, carry out assassinations and other forms of, semi-terrorist activity. This is the wrong course, but it's understandable that people who bear this pressure of untenable conditions will lash out in that way. We have to provide a better, viable, mass action-oriented response to these conditions, and we have the answers that will offer alternatives. There are illusions in the United States and the Democratic Party, illusions globally in the BRICS. The BRICS is an alliance of capitalist powers, although Socialist Action Canada does not include China in that list. We regard China as a deformed worker state, where the Chinese Communist Party calls the shots in the economy. But it is not heading towards a socialist, worker self-management, bottom-up democracy on any level. So we cannot rely on that bureaucracy, and we certainly cannot rely on the powers that animate the BRICS. Is there a problem with associating with that in order to expand trade prospects and the use of other currencies that diminish the influence of the United States? Yes, of course, but this is not a strategy. These are sub-tactics. The strategy is building a Revolutionary Workers International and building revolutionary parties in every country so that we can put an end to a system that is poisonous and toxic and malevolent to the interests of the vast majority on this planet. That's what Socialist Action Canada is dedicated to doing, and we're doing it with our partners in Mexico and Canada and the United States and Europe and other places. And we invite all of you who want to fight for a better world to join us today, to help us convey that message to larger and larger layers of the working class and the oppressed, because through unity on a revolutionary basis, we shall overcome. Venceremos.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Special thanks, of course, to our panelists, to Jaime, Jeff, and Barry, and thank you to Corey, who's been coordinating all of this from the tech room. Thank you so very much, comrade, and for everybody that participated, and I'm sure many will watch this on YouTube. So our next panel that starts sharp at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard. The next panel will address the topic Imperialism, Marx Value Theory, and Artificial Intelligence. Our speakers will be a Marxist economist, Michael Roberts from Britain, Imogen Xavier in Vancouver, British Columbia, and Gerard Trolio in Hamilton, Ontario. And also we'll have a special treat at the beginning. We will have our own comrade, Emily Steers, who's a soprano and music teacher that will be singing a song or two for us. So until then, see you all at 4 p.m. Thanks for coming.